Ibn Abbas has also said, when the soul was blown into him, it came to him from the front of the head and it animated him. And nowhere did it go into the body except that it became flesh and blood. Allah the Exalted has said, and He taught Adam the names of everything. There are 2 points regarding Adam's naming of things. One is that we must firstly talk about the name Adam. The name Adam is used because he was created from the mud of the earth. Ibn Abbas, Ibn Jubayr and Az-Zujaj have said this. And secondly, that his clay was brown in luster and color, as said by Ad-Dahhak and An-Nadr ibn Shumayl and Qatrab. There are 2 points regarding the names that Allah taught Adam. One is that He taught him all the names. This is the statement of Ibn Abbas and Sa'id ibn Jubayr, Mujahid and Qatada. Secondly, He taught him the names of specific things that had been enumerated. Now, regarding those things that had been named and what they were, there are 4 statements from the ulama with regard to it. One is that the names of those things that he was taught were the names of the angels. This is stated by Abu al-Aliya. Secondly, is that he was taught the names of all things in general without their particulars. For example, when you say human being, angel, jinn, bird, without specifying the other genuses or types within them. This has been stated by Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl. Thirdly, that he taught him the names of the beasts of the land, the creeping things, the birds of the air that were in the earth. And this has been stated by Al-Kalbi, Muqatil, and Ibn Qutaybah. Fourthly, that he taught him the names of his descendants that would come. And this was said by Ibn Zayd. Close quote. Now there are a couple of points here that I just want to mention very quickly. This ayah, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. There is a difference of opinion regarding the practical application of the ayah in the circles of the theologians. Ash'aris are going to say that this ayah is a proof of the validity of the use of speculative theology. What in Arabic is called ilm al-kalam, speculative theology. It is a proof of the use of speculative theology. Because Adam is being commanded to name the things, and he's naming the things, and this is showing qiyas. This is showing analogy. He is figuring, he is thinking, he is reflecting, he's doing qiyas, and he's naming the things. He's telling the names of the things. On the other end of the spectrum, because the Ash'aris will say this because it is important, they say, regarding ilm al-kalam, because ilm al-kalam will be using your intellect to understand issues outside of the speech of Allah. So some of, not all of, some of the Ash'ari books on theology, the first 2 to 3 chapters will have no verses, no ahadith. They will be talking about logic. They will be using Neoplatonist reasoning. The earth is created at a point in time. Things are made from essences and forms and bodies, and they will begin this whole concept and discussion, quoting directly from Aristotle, using this as the basis. Then when they have finished quoting that, they then begin to discuss the particulars of creed using ilm al-kalam when they are quoting the verses and the other things. And they will say, because certain aspects of speculative theology and Neoplatonist philosophy can be used in a legitimate way within the religion as long as they're within the confines of the book and the sunnah and the rationality of human thought. On the other end of the spectrum, Hanbalis and Maturidis will say, no, you do not use speculative theology, not even as a last resort. And they'll quote the same ayah, but they'll say, if you look at the ayah, it says, and he, Allah, taught Adam the names of all things. And if you look at the rest of the verses, Adam had the names already given to him to give to the things that he had been told to name. And then, after, when you look at the flow of the rest of the discussion, Allah asked Adam, he doesn't say, name the things. He doesn't say to the angels, now ask Adam the names he's given the things. Allah asked Adam, tell them the names of the things. Which means inform them, ambi'uni, inform me when he's asking the angels, meaning that it's already something that has been named by He, Allah. And so this is one of the verses that will sometimes be used, whether or not ilm al-kalam or speculative theology is a valid principle in the deen. I've mentioned it here very briefly because it is something that will come up as some or more of you when you start to study theology, or if you want to study theology at a deeper level, or tafsir literature at a deeper level, like Fakhruddin al-Razi's tafsir, like Mahmud al-Alusi's tafsir, like some of the other larger tafsir compendiums, ilm al-kalam or speculative theology will come up. You'll be reading along in Arabic and Aristotle or Socrates or Plato's name will come up. Just will. So if you're reading in that type of literature, you need to know that that is not the mainstay, that is not the baseline. There is a difference of opinion in this regard. And finally, in ending all of that off, it needs to be understood that the mud in the Qur'an that's mentioned, hama'im masnoon, that mud, it's mentioned in several other ayat which we'll come to, that mud, the scholars translate that that mud is sood, it's black or it's dark colored, and that when it was baked, the mud, it lightened. It became a light tawny brown or khaki color. Because the problem that you will find is there are some inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un that have read the Qur'an and said, well, this is clear proof that the first man on earth was black and everyone's black and so on and so forth. That's a lie. That's not true, because when clay gets baked, clay actually becomes a khaki color when it becomes heated, even though before it might have been humus or it might have been very black. When it becomes baked, it becomes very khaki color. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have the side of those from the 1800s and the Enlightenment period that, well, obviously all of the other human beings in the world must have been white. And that's where all of our civilization came from. Then they unearthed the pyramids and found these tall, brown, large, hook-nosed, big-eyed, brown-eyed. There weren't any blue eyes and blonde hair because it's a recessive gene. They started doing testing and they started finding that as you mate more people together, the gene for blonde hair and blue eyes disappears. They started finding that it was a recessive allele because they were desperately trying to prove that there must be some original white Nordic super race. But every time they examined the different races, they found that, no, these are recessive genes. The small chin, the almost non-existent cheekbones, the thinned hair on the top, the bleached hair, that blonde hair, those are all recessive alleles, which have a predetermination towards all forms of hepatitis, cancers, all these predispositions. And it's not to say that this is what the definite proof that whites are wicked. It's stating something that they, in their scientific journals, admit. So on both sides, you have those who would call themselves Afrocentrists, who say, no, definitely everyone was black, everyone was African. That's a lie. And furthermore to this, the Prophet Adam alayhi salam was not on earth where melanin and the changes in sunlight would affect the skin color, which is why we get the different races that we have, because the melanin reacts differently. And this is why some people are brown and some people are more brown and some people are blue-black and some people are purple-black. And then some people are as white as a sheet and then some people aren't. And some people are in the middle and some people are indeterminate because of the melanin and the reaction with the skin, the ultraviolet radiation, how much of the atmosphere is over them at the time and whether there's a hole in the ozone. All these other things are deciding melanin. Who told you that the Prophet Adam alayhi salam and his wife in the paradise were in need of all of the things that we associate with melanin content and everything else? That's an assumption being made, and a dangerous one at that. So we have to be careful, because we know that the people of the paradise, as mentioned in Bukhari, that the Prophet ﷺ says their skin is translucent and you can see through it to their bones. So this idea about melanin, this is something that's coming far later in the line. So I don't want anyone to read these. I've had to state this because it's a common issue that's coming where people are looking for the master race. Well, let me inform you. There is no master plan because there's no master race. And the only people and the only plan is Allah's plan. So the people that are crispy because that's the type of clay that they've come from. It's baked, it was hard, it was dark, and that's within the other type of clay. The people that are sort of brown and caramelly red like myself are coming from that type of clay. And the people that are sort of indiscriminate and they sort of fit with a sort of peanut butter or cocoa flavor or all these different types where people come from, that's because that's the clay they're coming from. It's nothing more, it's nothing less. It doesn't mean better, it doesn't mean less. These are crispy, therefore they're no good. These are white as a sheet, therefore they're no good. It doesn't mean any of that. It doesn't mean any of that. And if you look historically, the vast majority of people on the earth have not been blue, black, midnight, white as a sheet, Ku Klux Klan. It's always been in the middle. Look on the pyramids of Egypt. Are they blue, black? No, they're brown. The ancient Arabs up until now, brown. Hebrews, brown. Asians, brown. Vietnamese, brown. Inuit, brown. Ancient Brazil people, brown. Ancient Aztecs, brown. Blue, black, crispy, burnt is not the mainstay, and neither is Ku Klux white as a sheet. They are other ends of the spectrum. Imam Ibn Al-Jawzi rahimahullah, he then says, quote, then Allah the Exalted says, so he brought them in front of them. Meaning that he, Allah, brought the different creations that had been named in front of the angels. Ibn Abbas states, the angels mentioned here are those that had been with Iblis at the times before during the battle. The expression inform me was then said by the Exalted One. Ambi'uni, inform me.